houses remember. They sit there, windows dark, lawns overgrown, mailboxes stuffed with letters that will never be read. Maple Street was supposed to be the perfect neighborhood. White picket fences, children's laughter echoing from backyards, the sound of lawnmowers on Saturday mornings. But that was before the families left. All of them, the Hendersons, with their twin boys who loved to ride their bikes until sunset. The elderly Mrs. Chen, who tended her rose garden with the devotion of someone who understood beauty in small things. The young couple at number 42 who had just painted their front door that cheerful shade of yellow. One by one, they packed their belongings, loaded their cars, and drove away. But here's what doesn't make sense. What keeps me awake at night, staring at the real estate listings that never appear. None of them sold their homes. Not a single for sale sign appeared on any lawn. No moving trucks came to collect furniture. The houses just emptied, as if the families had simply evaporated, leaving behind everything they once called home. I found this out 3 months ago when I moved into the only house that was actually for sale, number 37. The realtor, a nervous man with sweaty palms, had been unusually eager to close the deal. He kept checking his watch, glancing at the empty houses around us, muttering something about paperwork complications with the other properties. When I asked him about the neighbors, he went quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that still sends chills down my spine. They're all still paying their mortgages, every single one of them. The banks confirmed it. Automatic payments never missed a month. It's like they're planning to come back, but they never do. That's what I thought, anyway, until I found the journal hidden in my basement, written in my own handwriting, dated 5 years ago, describing everything that's about to happen. I've lived on Maple Street before. I just forgot. Welcome back to the creepy journal, where the stories don't end when the page does. I'm your narrator, and tonight we're diving into something that challenges everything we think we know about home, memory, and the places that refuse to let us go. If you're new here, consider subscribing before you lose track of how long you've been listening. And if you're returning, well, maybe you've been here before too. Maybe we all have. Let me tell you about Maple Street. Let me tell you about the houses that won't forget and the families who never really left. I remember the day I first saw 37 Maple Street. It was a Tuesday in October, leaves turning that deep amber color that makes you think of comfort and home. The house was modest, 2 stories, brick facade, a small front porch with a swing that creaked gently in the autumn breeze. Normal, inviting, everything I thought I wanted after years of apartment living. The realtor, Mr. Patterson, met me at the curb. He was a thin man with prematurely grey hair and eyes that seemed to look everywhere except directly at you. As we walked up the front path, I noticed how quiet the street was. Not just quiet, silent. No dogs barking, no children playing, no sounds of life from any of the surrounding houses. Peaceful neighborhood, I commented, trying to fill the uncomfortable silence. Mr. Patterson fumbled with his keys. Yes, very peaceful. The previous owners were lovely people, very quiet, very considerate. The way he said it made me glance around again. The house to my left, number 35, had newspapers piled up on the porch. The one to my right, number 39, had a child's tricycle sitting in the driveway, covered in leaves and what looked like months of neglect. Are the neighbors away? I asked. Mr. Patterson's hand paused on the door handle. Something like that, he murmured. "Shall we go inside?" The house was beautiful. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But there was something off about it, not with the house itself, but with the feeling it gave me. Walking through the rooms, I had this strange sensation of déjà vu, like I was remembering a dream I'd had long ago, in the living room. I stopped in front of a large window that faced the street. From this angle, I could see almost the entire neighborhood. Row after row of houses, all identical in their emptiness. No lights in any windows, no cars in most driveways. It was like looking at a movie set after the cameras had stopped rolling. "What happened to everyone?" I asked. Mr. Patterson was signing papers at the kitchen table, his movements quick and nervous. "People move," he said without looking up. "Life changes. New opportunities. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. I'd lived in neighborhoods before, and people didn't just all disappear at once. There should have been some continuity, some overlap. New families moving in as old ones moved out. Instead, Maple Street felt like a place that had been abandoned. All at once, like everyone had received the same urgent message to leave. As we finished the paperwork, I found myself drawn back to that living room window. The late afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the street, and for just a moment, I could have sworn I saw movement in the house directly across from me. A curtain twitching, a shadow passing by a window. But when I blinked and looked again, there was nothing. "The utilities are all connected," Mr. Patterson said, appearing behind me with startling suddenness. "Water, electricity, gas, everything's ready for you." He handed me the keys with shaking hands. "I hope you'll be comfortable here." The way he said it sounded less like a wish and more like a prayer. After he left, I spent the rest of the evening unpacking boxes and trying to shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I passed a window, I found myself glancing out at the empty houses, half expecting to see faces staring back at me. The rational part of my mind kept insisting that this was normal, that I was just adjusting to a new environment, that the emptiness would feel less oppressive once I settled in. But as night fell and I stood in my new bedroom, looking out at the darkened street, I realized something that made my skin crawl. In all the houses I could see, in all the windows facing the street, there wasn't a single light on, not one. It was as if the entire neighborhood had been holding its breath, waiting for something. That night, I dreamed I was walking down Maple Street, but it wasn't empty. Children were playing in the yards, families were having barbecues, neighbors were chatting over fences. It felt real, more real than the empty street I'd seen during the day. In the dream, I waved to Mrs. Chen as she watered her roses. I helped the Henderson boys retrieve their ball from my yard. I chatted with the young couple about their new yellow door. When I woke up, I felt a deep, inexplicable sadness, not because the dream was over, but because it felt like a memory of something I'd lost, something I'd forgotten. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On my nightstand, next to my alarm clock, was a small key I'd never seen before. It was old, made of brass, with intricate engravings that seemed to shift and change when I wasn't looking directly at them. Somehow, I knew it was meant for a door I hadn't found yet. A door that would explain why the families left, why the houses remember, and why I felt like I'd been on Maple Street before. I just didn't know if I wanted to find that door. The first time I saw them, I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Sleep deprivation, stress from the move, maybe too much coffee. But as the days passed, it became harder to dismiss what I was seeing. It started with Mrs. Chen. I was making breakfast on my third morning in the house when I glanced out the kitchen window and saw her in her garden. She was exactly as I remembered from my dream, a small, elegant woman in her 70s, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and gardening gloves, tending to her roses with the same careful attention I'd somehow known she would have. I dropped my coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but I barely noticed. I pressed my face against the window, trying to get a better look, but the angle was wrong. By the time I ran outside, the garden was empty, just overgrown grass and a few wild weeds where roses should have been, but the scent lingered. The sweet, complex fragrance of blooming roses on a summer morning, even though it was November and there were no flowers anywhere on the street. The next incident happened while I was getting my mail. I was walking back from the mailbox when I heard the sound of children laughing. The Henderson twins were riding their bikes in the street, weaving between invisible cars, their voices bright and full of joy. One of them, I somehow knew his name was Tyler, waved at me. "Hi, Mr. Morrison," he called out. "Want to race?" I stood there, frozen, staring at these children who couldn't be there. Tyler was wearing a red jacket and had a gap-toothed grin. His brother Sam was slightly smaller, more cautious, always staying close to the sidewalk even when they were playing in the street. I started to respond, but my voice caught in my throat, because I realized something terrifying. I knew. These children, not just from my dream, but from somewhere deeper, from memories that felt real but couldn't possibly be mine. "Maybe tomorrow," I heard myself say, and Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "Tomorrow," he agreed, and then both boys pedaled away, their laughter echoing off the empty houses until it faded into silence. When I looked down at my hands, I was holding mail addressed to residents who had supposedly moved away months ago. Letters for the Hendersons, for Mrs. Chen, for the young couple at 42. But according to the postmarks, these letters had been delivered yesterday. That evening, I decided to investigate. I walked the entire length of Maple Street, notepad in hand, documenting every house, every address, every sign of abandonment. What I found didn't make sense. Number 35, the house where newspapers had been piling up, now had a clean porch and a fresh coat of paint on the front door. But when I knocked, no one answered. When I peered through the windows, I could see furniture arranged as if someone lived there, but everything was covered in dust. Number 39, where the child's tricycle had been sitting in the driveway, now had a perfectly manicured lawn and flower boxes under the windows, but the tricycle was still there, in exactly the same position, still covered in leaves. At number 42, the house with the yellow door, I found something that made my knees weak. There was a woman standing at the window, watching me. She was young, maybe in her early 30s, with brown hair and kind eyes. She smiled and waved, and I found myself waving back before I could stop myself. "Sarah," I whispered, though I had no idea how I knew her name. She mouthed something to me through the glass. It looked like welcome home. I blinked, and she was gone. But the yellow door was freshly painted, as if someone had just finished the job moments before. When I got back to my own house, I found a note slipped under my door. It was written in neat, feminine handwriting. "Thank you for helping with the garden today. The roses have never looked better. Grace, Chen." I hadn't helped with any garden. I hadn't even spoken to Mrs. Chen, because Mrs. Chen wasn't there. None. of them were there, but the note was real. The paper was real. And when I turned it over, I found something that made my hands shake. A pressed rose petal, still fresh, still fragrant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the children, about Mrs. Chen, about Sarah at the window, about the way they all seemed to know me, to expect me, to welcome me home to a place I'd never been before, or had I? I got up around midnight and went to the window. The street was dark, but not empty. Not anymore. In the house across from mine, I could see the warm glow of lamps in the windows. At number 35, a television flickered blue against drawn curtains. At number 39, a porch light had been turned on, casting a circle of yellow light on the front steps. Maple Street was alive again, full of families going about their evening routines, settling in for the night, living their lives in houses that had been empty just hours before. I stood at that window for a long time, watching my neighbours exist in a reality that seemed to overlap with mine but never quite aligned with it. They were there, but they weren't. They were real, but they couldn't be. And the most terrifying part wasn't that I was seeing them, it was that they were seeing me. The basement was the one place in the house I'd been avoiding. Not consciously, at first. There had just always been something more important to unpack, somewhere else to organize. But by the end of my first week on Maple Street, I couldn't ignore it anymore. It started with the sounds. Every night, around 2 in the morning, I would hear something from below. Not footsteps exactly, but a rhythmic creaking, like someone slowly rocking back and forth. At first, I convinced myself it was just the house settling, old wood expanding and contracting with the temperature changes. But houses don't settle in a steady, deliberate rhythm, and they don't stop abruptly when you get up to investigate. The basement door was located in the kitchen, next to the pantry. It was painted the same white as the other doors in the house, but there was something different about it. Something that made me reluctant to touch the handle. The wood around the frame was darker, as if it had been stained by years of moisture. Or ... something else. On Thursday night, the sounds were louder than usual, more insistent. As I lay in bed, listening to that slow, hypnotic creaking, I realized it wasn't random. There was a pattern to it, a cadence that seemed almost like communication, like someone was trying to tell me something. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way to the kitchen. The basement door stood closed, but I could feel air moving beneath it. Not cold air, but warm, as if something down there was generating heat, or breathing. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. Every instinct told me to go back to bed, to ignore the sounds, to pretend the basement didn't exist. But I needed to know. I needed to understand what was happening to me, to this house, to this street that existed in multiple realities at once. The door opened easily, as if it had been waiting for me. The stairs leading down were wooden, old but sturdy. My flashlight beam revealed a typical basement concrete floor, exposed beams, a water heater in one corner. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. But as I descended, I noticed something odd about the space. It was larger than it should have been, much larger. The basement seemed to extend far beyond the footprint of the house above, stretching into darkness that my flashlight couldn't penetrate. At the bottom of the stairs, I found the source of the creaking sound. In the center of the basement was an old rocking chair, moving back and forth with steady, deliberate motions. There was no one in it, no wind to move it, no mechanical device to keep it going. It was just ... rocking. Next to the chair was a small table, and on the table was a leather-bound journal. The same journal I'd found 3 nights ago, the one with my handwriting that I didn't remember writing. But now it was open to a different page, and the writing was fresh, as if someone had just finished writing in it. I approached carefully, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the entire neighborhood could hear it. The page was dated 5 years ago, but the ink was still wet. Day 1, moved into 37 Maple Street today. Something's wrong with this place. The families are all gone, but I can see them sometimes. They know me, they're waiting for me to remember. Day 7, found the basement. The chair is rocking again. I think Mrs. Chen is trying to tell me something. The roses in her garden spell out letters when you look at them from the right angle. They spell help. Day 12, the Henderson boys asked me to play hide and seek. I found Tyler hiding in the basement. He's been down here for months. He can't leave. None of them can leave. Day 18. I understand now. The street isn't haunted. It's hungry. It feeds on families, on the idea of home, on the connections between people. Once you've lived here, really lived here, you can't ever really leave. You can pack up and drive away, but part of you stays, and eventually that part calls you back. Day 25. I tried to leave today. Got as far as the city limits before I found myself driving back. The house was waiting for me. The basement door was open. The chair was rocking faster, like it was excited to see me return. Day 30. I'm going to try something different. Going to leave, but I'm going to leave my memories behind. Hide them somewhere safe. Maybe if I can't remember living here, I can escape. Maybe I can break the cycle. Day 31. If you're reading this, it means you're me. It means you came back. The memories are hidden in the walls, in the very structure of the house. But they're starting to bleed through, aren't they? You're remembering things you never experienced, people you never met, a life you never lived. Day 32. There's a door. Behind the water heater. I found it tonight. It leads to the other houses, to the other basements. We're all connected down here. All the families who could never really leave. The Hendersons are in there, still playing their games. Mrs. Chen is still tending her roses. Sarah is still painting her door yellow, over and over again. Day 33. I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to leave everything behind. The memories, the connections, the feeling of home. I'm going to drive away and never look back. But if I fail, if I come back, if you're reading this, ... you need to know. The only way to break the cycle is to go through that door, to face what we've become, to accept that Maple Street isn't just a place we lived, it's a place we became. The journal entry ended there, but I could hear something behind me, the gentle scraping of a pen against paper. I turned around, and there I was sitting in the rocking chair, writing in the journal, my face slack and expressionless. The other me looked up and smiled. "Welcome home," he said in my voice. "I've been waiting for you to remember." I stumbled backward, knocking over the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, its beam sweeping across the basement walls and revealing something that made me scream. The walls weren't concrete. They were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, all showing the same scene. Families moving into houses on Maple Street, unpacking boxes, meeting neighbors, settling into their new lives. And in every photograph, no matter which family, no matter which house, there was the same figure in the background, watching, waiting, smiling. It was me. "You've lived here before," the other me said, still rocking gently. "Many times. Each time you try to leave. Each time you forget. Each time you come back. But it's okay. The street takes care of its own." I ran for the stairs, but they seemed to stretch endlessly upward. Behind me, I could hear the rocking chair moving faster, keeping time with my panicked breathing. And underneath that sound, I could hear something else. Laughter, the joyful laughter of children playing. The Henderson boys were down there, in the darkness beyond the photographs. They were playing hide and seek, just like they always had, just like they always would, and they were waiting for me to join them. When I finally reached the kitchen, I slammed the basement door shut and leaned against it, gasping. But I could still hear the rocking chair. I could still hear the laughter, and I could still feel that warm air moving beneath the door, carrying with it the scent of roses and freshly painted wood and the dreams of families who had found their perfect home. In my hand, I was clutching the brass key I'd found on my nightstand. Somehow, I knew it would open the door behind the water heater, the door that connected all the basements, all the houses, all the lives that Maple Street had claimed. I just didn't know if I was brave enough to use it, or if I was strong enough. The revelation came 3 days later, while I was sorting through the moving boxes I'd stored in the garage. I was looking for my old photo albums, hoping that seeing pictures of my life before Maple Street might help anchor me to reality. What I found instead changed everything. At the bottom of a box labeled personal items, wrapped in tissue paper, was a small stack of photographs. They were old, the kind developed in a 1-hour photo lab, with that slightly faded quality that comes from being handled too often. The top photo showed a young couple standing in front of a house with a yellow door. The woman had brown hair and kind eyes. The man looked exactly like me, but younger. I knew that couple, Sarah and David Morrison, but I'd never been married. I'd never owned a house with a yellow door. I'd never lived on Maple Street before 3 weeks ago. The next photograph showed the same man, me helping an elderly Asian woman plant roses in her garden. Behind them, 2 young boys were riding bicycles in the street. The photo was dated 15 years ago. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the rest of the stack. There I was, having a barbecue with the Hendersons. There I was, painting a front door yellow. There I was, standing in a basement next to a rocking chair, writing in a leather-bound journal. But the most disturbing photograph was the last one. It showed me standing in the exact same garage where I was now, holding the exact same stack of photographs, wearing the exact same expression of confused terror on the back. In my own handwriting was a message. "The loop begins again. David Morrison, October 15th, 2019. Today was October 15th, 2024. I dropped the photographs and ran back into the house. In the basement, the journal was open to a new page. The ink was still wet. Cycle number 7. He's found the photographs. He's starting to remember. The process is accelerating. Soon he'll understand that time isn't linear on Maple Street. It's circular. We live, we love, we leave, we forget, we return. Over and over. The street feeds on repetition, on the comfort of familiar patterns, on the human need to come home. Sarah is getting stronger. She appears to him more often now. She remembers more of their life together. Soon she'll be able to speak to him directly, to help him remember their wedding, their plans for children. The morning she told him she was pregnant. The morning they decided to move to Maple Street to start their family. The pregnancy never happened. Not in the way they expected. Maple Street has its own way of creating families, of binding people together. The children who play in the street, the neighbours who wave from their gardens, the couples who paint their doors bright colours, they're all part of the same organism, the street, the neighbourhood, the perfect suburban dream that never ends. He's fighting it now, but he always fights it. In cycle number 3, he lasted 2 months before accepting his place here. In cycle number 5, he tried to burn the house down. The flames wouldn't catch. You can't destroy something that exists in multiple timelines simultaneously. The brass key is calling to him. Soon he'll have to choose. Use it to open the door and accept the truth, or try to leave again and reset the cycle. But each time he resets, he loses a little more of his original self. Each time he returns, he's a little more integrated into the street's consciousness. I wonder if he'll remember this time. I wonder if he'll remember Sarah and the baby that never was, and the life they built together in a house that exists in a place between memory and reality. I wonder if he'll remember that he's not the victim here. He's the shepherd. He's the one who guides new families to Maple Street, who helps them settle in, who makes them feel welcome. He's the one who ensures the cycle continues. The journal entry ended there, but I could hear Sarah calling my name from upstairs. Not the way she had that first time, mouthing words through a window, but clearly, lovingly, the way a wife calls to her husband. David, are you okay down there? Dinner's ready. I climbed the stairs on unsteady legs. In the kitchen, Sarah was setting the table for 2. She was solid now, real, wearing the same floral dress she'd worn in our wedding photos. A photo I somehow remembered taking, but knew I'd never seen before. You found the pictures, she said, not looking up from the plates. I wondered when you'd remember to look in the garage. Sarah, I started, but she held up a hand. I know it's confusing. It's always confusing at first, but you'll adjust. You always do. She smiled at me with such warmth, such love, that it made my chest ache. We have a good life here, David. A perfect life. Isn't that what we always wanted? I looked around the kitchen, and it was different now. There were family photos on the refrigerator, showing us at various stages of our life together. Our wedding day, our first Christmas in the house, me teaching Tyler Henderson to ride a bike, Sarah and Mrs. Chen working in the garden together. The baby, I said suddenly. We were going to have a baby. Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment. We did have a baby. We have lots of babies. The whole street is our family now. Tyler and Sam, little Emma from number 44, baby Michael from the corner house. They're all ours, David. They're all part of us. Through the kitchen window, I could see the street coming alive. Families were sitting down to dinner. Children were playing in the fading light. Neighbours were chatting over fences. It was perfect. It was exactly what we'd dreamed of when we first moved here. But I could also see the other reality. The empty houses, the overgrown lawns, the for sale sign in front of number 37 that had never been there before. Both realities existed simultaneously, overlapping and intersecting in ways that made my head spin. Which one is real? I asked. Sarah took my hand. Her skin was warm, familiar. Does it matter? We're happy here. We're together. Isn't that enough? The brass key was in my pocket, heavy and warm against my leg. I could feel it calling to me, promising answers, demanding a choice. I could use it to open the door in the basement to see what lay beyond the water heater, to understand the true nature of Maple Street. Or I could stay here, in this kitchen, with this woman who might be my wife, living a life that might be real, in a place that might be home. The choice was mine. I chose the key that night. While Sarah slept peacefully beside me in our bed that I remembered buying but had never seen before, I crept down to the basement. The journal was open to a new page, the ink still wet. Cycle number 7, day 23. He's going to try again. He's going to use the key. He thinks he can break the cycle by confronting the truth. But the truth is what creates the cycle. The truth is what keeps us here. I should stop him. I should hide the key, destroy the door, reset everything back to day 1, but I'm tired. 7 cycles of watching myself discover the same horrible reality, make the same choices, love the same woman, lose the same future. Maybe it's time to let him try something different. Maybe it's time to let him see what's really behind the door. The rocking chair was still moving when I reached the bottom of the stairs, but slower now, more deliberately. The other me was sitting in it, but he looked older, more worn. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hands shook as he wrote in the journal. "You're going to use the key," he said without looking up. "You think it will give you answers, won't it?" I asked. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, it will give you answers, just not the ones you want." I walked to the water heater and found the door exactly where the journal had described it. It was small, barely large enough for a person to crawl through, and it was painted the same color as the basement walls. I might have missed it entirely if I hadn't been looking for it. The brass key fit perfectly. When I turned it, the door swung open silently, revealing a tunnel that stretched into darkness. The air that flowed out was warm and carried the scent of roses and fresh paint and children's laughter. "Go ahead," the other me said. "See what we've become." I crawled through the door and found myself in another basement, identical to mine, but reversed like a mirror image. There was another rocking chair, another journal, another version of myself sitting and writing. When he looked up, his eyes were completely black. "Welcome to number 35, he said. "The Henderson's house, or what's left of it." I stood up, brushing dust from my clothes. "Where are Tyler and Sam?" "Playing," he said, pointing to a corner of the basement where 2 small figures huddled together. They looked up when I approached, and I saw that they weren't children anymore. They were something else, something that had once been children but had been twisted by years of endless games, endless hiding, endless seeking. "Want to play?" Tyler asked in a voice that sounded like wind through empty rooms. "We've been waiting for you." I backed away, but there was another door behind me, and another version of myself opening it. This one led to Mrs. Chen's basement, where she tended to roses that grew in the dark, roses that bled when you touched them, roses that screamed when you tried to pick them. "Beautiful, aren't they?" she said, her voice like rustling leaves. "I've been growing them for so long I can't remember what sunlight looks like." Door after door, basement after basement, each one containing the residents of Maple Street as they truly were. Not ghosts, not memories, but something worse. People who had been absorbed by the street, integrated into its consciousness, transformed into components of a larger organism that fed on the idea of home, of family, of belonging. And in every basement, there was another version of me, documenting the process, guiding new families to their fate, ensuring that the cycle continued. "How many?" I asked one of them. "Hundreds," he replied. "Maybe thousands. The street has been here for a long time, in many different forms. Sometimes it's a neighbourhood. Sometimes it's an apartment building. Sometimes it's a small town. But it's always the same. Always hungry. Always growing. I found Sarah in the last basement, the one beneath our house with the yellow door. She was painting the door over and over again, each coat of yellow paint applied with mechanical precision. She'd been painting for years, decades, maybe centuries. Her hands were stained permanently yellow, and her eyes had the same distant look as the others. "I want it to be perfect," she said without looking at me. "For when you come home, for when we start our family, for when we're happy." "Sarah, we need to leave," I said. "We need to get out of here." She stopped painting and looked at me with such sadness that it broke my heart. "David, we can't leave. This is our home. This is where we belong. This is where we're happy. But we're not happy," I said. "We're trapped." "What's the difference?" asked another voice. I turned to see the first version of myself, the one from my basement, standing in the doorway. "We have everything we ever wanted. A home, a family, a community. People who care about us. People who will never leave us. Because it's not real," I said, though even as I spoke the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. "Reality is subjective," he replied. "What matters is how it feels, and this feels like home." I looked around at the basement, at Sarah painting, her door, at the other versions of myself scattered throughout the connected houses. They all seemed content, purposeful, complete. They had found their place in the world, even if that place existed outside of normal time and space. But I could also see the cost. The way their eyes had lost their spark. The way their movements had become mechanical, repetitive. The way they had become less human and more ... something else. "There has to be a way out," I said. "There is," the other me said. "The same way you got in. Drive away, forget, start over. But you'll be back. You always come back. Because this is where you belong." I ran through the tunnels, through the doors, through the basements of houses that existed in multiple realities. Behind me, I could hear laughter, crying, the sound of children playing games that would never end. I could hear Sarah calling my name, asking me to come back, to help her finish painting the door. When I finally reached my own basement, I was gasping for breath. The journal was open to a new page. Cycle number 7, day 23. He's seen the truth. He's seen what we become. Now he has to choose, accept it or fight it. But fighting it means leaving Sarah behind. Fighting it means abandoning the family we've built. Fighting it means admitting that the perfect life we've created is a lie. I know what he'll choose. I know because I've made the same choice 7 times before. He'll try to leave. He'll drive away. He'll forget. And in a few years, he'll be back, starting the cycle all over again. But maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time he'll stay. Maybe this time he'll accept that some prisons are indistinguishable from paradise. I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking. In the kitchen, Sarah was waiting for me, still wearing her floral dress, still smiling that warm, loving smile. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. I looked at her, this woman who might be my wife, who might be a construct of my own longing for companionship, who might be something else entirely. She was beautiful, she was kind, she loved me. What more could I want? "I found the truth," I said. "And what's the truth, David?" I was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the basements, the tunnels, the other versions of myself who had made this choice before. The truth is that I have to leave. Her smile faltered. You can't leave. This is your home. I know. That's why I have to go. I walked to the front door, and she followed me. Outside, the street was coming alive with morning activity. Children were getting ready for school. Adults were leaving for work. Mrs. Chen was watering her roses. It was perfect. It was everything I'd ever wanted. But I could also see the other reality. The empty houses, the overgrown lawns, the silence that had greeted me when I first arrived. Both realities existed simultaneously, and I was the bridge between them. If you leave, Sarah said, you'll forget me, you'll forget us. You'll forget the life we built together. I know, and you'll come back. You always come back. I know. She stepped closer, took my hand. Then why leave at all? Why not stay here, where we're happy? I looked down at our joined hands. Her skin was warm, real, familiar. Because happiness without choice isn't happiness at all. It's just ... existence. I pulled away and walked to my car. The keys were in my pocket, next to the brass key that had shown me the truth. As I drove away, I could see Sarah standing in the doorway, watching me go. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pleading. She was just ... waiting. Because she knew I'd be back. The street disappeared in my rearview mirror. But I could still smell the roses, still hear the children's laughter, still feel the warmth of a place that had offered me everything I'd ever wanted. And as I drove toward the city, toward a life I couldn't quite remember, I found myself already planning my I'm recording this message from a motel room 3 states away from Maple Street. It's been 6 months since I left, and the memories are already starting to fade. Sarah's face is becoming less clear. The sound of the Henderson boys' laughter is growing distant. The scent of Mrs. Chen's roses is just a ghost of a memory, but I'm fighting it. I'm writing everything down, recording these words, trying to create an anchor that will keep me from drifting back to that place, because I know that's what it wants. The street, the neighborhood, the perfect suburban dream that exists in the spaces between reality and longing. I've tried to research Maple Street, to find some record of what happened to the families who lived there. But the records are inconsistent, contradictory. Some documents show the houses as continuously occupied. Others show them as abandoned for decades. Property records list the same families as both current residents and people who moved away years ago. The street exists in multiple timelines simultaneously, feeding off the human need for home, for belonging, for the perfect life that always seems just out of reach. It creates that perfect life, but the cost is freedom. The cost is choice. The cost is the very thing that makes us human. I can feel it calling to me even now, 3 states away. In quiet moments, I catch myself planning the drive back. I imagine pulling into the driveway of number 37, seeing Sarah's face light up when I walk through the door, hearing her say "welcome home" in that voice that sounds like everything I've ever wanted. Some places don't haunt you. They remember you. They absorb you. They become part of you, so that leaving feels like cutting away a piece of your soul. And maybe that's what love is, in the end. Maybe that's what home is. Maybe that's what family is. A beautiful trap that we choose to walk into over and over again. Because the alternative is loneliness. The elevator in this motel has been making a strange sound all night. A rhythmic creaking, like a rocking chair, like a door opening and closing. like the sound of someone calling my name. I think it's time to go home. If you're listening to this, if you found this recording, don't go looking for Maple Street. Don't try to find the families who moved out but never sold their homes. Don't try to solve the mystery, because some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Some questions are meant to remain unanswered. Some doors are meant to remain closed, and some people are meant to come home. Subscribe to the Creepy Journal before you forget who you are, before you forget where you belong, before you realize that you've been looking for home in all the wrong places.